Okay, Hazy and T in the building. We got Perry Solkowski, Sportsnet. If you like what I'm doing, hit the subscribe button.
Hi everybody, I'm Perry Solkowski, Sportsnet 650, and I'm coming up on I Only Touch Greatness podcast.
Hayes, Entertainment exclusive.
Ryan Hayes. Ryan never stop. I Only Touch Greatness podcast.
This is I Only Touch Greatness podcast with Ryan Hayes. We are going live.
Hey Perry, how you doing?
Good, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Awesome. Is it Ryan?
Yeah, it's Ryan.
Ryan, how are you? Are there three of us? Are there two of us? What's the deal, bud?
Just me and you today.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, my buddy's away today.
Okay, well, we'll see hockey in your background of your shot, and maybe you'll see hockey in the background of mine. It's probably not set up the best way, but
Yeah, it's all good. So you're out in Poco?
there's a few people kind of in the Poco, Port Moody area.
Yeah.
That we see on the boat. So no, that's perfect. Nice jerseys. Are those signed, or where'd you get the?
Yeah, this one's the signed Boeser, and then this one's the signed Pedersen, and then I'm in the Pedersen jersey too. So.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you a big collector? Always been a big collector?
Big collector. I've basically collect autographs. I also got season tickets.
Attaboy.
I don't know. Maybe you've seen the mini Don Cherry guy. The guy dresses up as Don Cherry at Canuck games.
Yeah.
That's me.
That's you.
Yeah.
So Ryan, have I met you then? Do you do that?
Did I run into you at the Canuck alumni event at UBC? Yeah. No. This is my first year with season tickets. I wanted to buy them 1 year that I thought we were going to win the cup, and I bet on the Canucks winning the cup. So, and then I could see the cup, be there for the cup, and then maybe cash out while you could. Or hit on the 1 year, right?
Well, you know what? That's exactly what it is. You weren't alone. There's a lot of people that spent a lot of money thinking that would be the choice, right? Because they pay so much going to the playoffs that you're done. And that was the case. For me, my wife and daughter don't like hockey, and I just said, man, when they get to the final, I go, okay, I'm going to spend a lot of money so you guys can at least go to one game. But yeah, that's the hope. That's the dream of a fan, to be there one day. It's a little closer than it was 2 or 3 years ago. We'll get there at some point.
Yeah, and they're already taking money out of my account for next season whenever we get a chance to be there. So that's okay. I'm ready for it. That's one thing that happened during COVID. I saved the money to come up with cash to pay for my Canuck tickets. So
attaboy, you need a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to go when you're ready to go.
Okay. Did you play sports growing up?
You know what I did? I was much like everybody else. Growing up, I grew up in Edmonton and played everything. Played hockey, played soccer, played everything in school, basketball, football. I always think, when people meet us and they go, and I'm a decent sized guy. Hey, did you play? And they always expect when they ask me, I think it's pro. And I just I kind of always knew as a kid I'd rather hold a microphone in my hand than do it. I played college soccer where I went to Nate in the Alberta Athletic Association. So I guess I was a decent athlete to be in college and playing at that level. But played everything, but always loved watching the events and thought, hey, you know what? There's someone else who is at those events, and that's the guys asking the questions. And so when I was a young kid, I kind of thought maybe this would be something I could pull off. And one day I'll sit back and go, I did a pretty decent job of it to make a living doing this.
And that's one of my next questions was, did you always want to be in the broadcasting?
Yeah, Ryan, it really was. You could go back to, I think, in grade 5 or 6 where you kind of have those Christmas plays, right, at school. And I didn't want to play any role of, any of the characters. I had asked, can I be the MC? Can I introduce, the grade 1 class and the grade 2 class? And I did. And it's funny because, as I went through high school and then I came back and worked in Edmonton for 7 years and did the version of what people would know here as Sports Page, a half-hour show. I would have the odd high school teacher. I'd go back to my high school. They'd ask me to do stuff, but they said, man, I never would have thought that in high school you would take a job that puts you in front of people and in front of cameras. But I always like to think I knew going in that's what I wanted to do. I just was never going to be the loud class clown. Maybe I had some focus to me. But yeah, it's something I always wanted to do. And have been really lucky to chart a course that kind of has been filled with dreams, to be honest.
And you studied radio and TV broadcasting at Northern Alberta Institute. That's like their BCIT.
It's exactly like their BCIT. There were only a handful of schools in Canada that had it. BCIT one, I think Ryerson in Toronto, and SAIT just started to do one. SAIT being the technical school in Calgary, and we were a young group of high school graduates. Normally, as you would find now, you find a lot of kids who might be already through university, 23, 24, more on the mature student side. But Nate wanted to try something and bring us all out of high school and see if we can do it. And so there was a young group of us, all got along great. One of them, a lifelong friend who we laugh about because Gene Principe was in my class. And so Gene and I have known each other for an awful long time, and we kind of always had this ambition. And I think there's about 4 or 5 of us that were lucky enough to turn it into a career. But really, the fortunate part about going to school was they wanted to try a young group of high school graduates, and they also changed the way they were doing the program. And they went outside and brought teachers who were working in the market who would come in and teach a class or two, once or twice a week and then leave. And I was fortunate that I had a couple of really good instructors from CBC Edmonton, and I was doing okay. So you start to build that relationship. And then actually before I graduated, there was a job at CBC Edmonton. So I was about 1 year and 3/4 of the way through, and they had suggested I apply for it. And I was in the newsroom, but that sports office was a pretty talented sports office. It was led by Chris Cuthbert, and the late night anchor was Gord Millett. So I immediately befriended them, and I started working on weekends there, pulling hockey highlights, putting football highlights, doing it for free. And then that turned into some part-time work. And Chris Cuthbert has, we've had him on our show quite a bit. He doesn't realize how much of a monster he created, because Chris worked in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and that was where my first job was. And no doubt it was because Chris Cuthbert probably gave me that very important reference to say, hey, I did it. This kid might be able to do it. And that was the start.
Okay. Yeah. One of my questions was there somebody that helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people, but certainly he is the one guy. And it's funny, I have a nickname that people in the industry call me, Pooh. It was given to me by Cuthbert. He had that, and he knows that. I was working in Korea and Pyeongchang for the Olympics and doing some behind-the-scenes stuff with hockey, and it's Pooh from a distance. It's Gord Miller calls me Pooh. And unbeknownst to Chris, that he didn't realize last time we had him on the show, when he moved back to Sportsnet a few months ago, I said, you realize I met my wife in Saskatchewan too. I met my wife in Yorkton. So I said, you really were the one guy that pointed me down. But he was the one guy. I'll always remember the first time I went to job shadow him. We went to do an Edmonton Eskimo story. He made sure I sat in the front seat. He made sure I was introduced to everybody. And I think that's always stuck with me, to be that kind of guy. And because you meet so many people in this industry, and there's so many people that want to get into it. So you just go, how can I help? And Chris Cuthbert probably was that guy influencing me when I was young, 18, 19, trying to see if I could make a living.
Yeah, I honestly never thought I would be doing this. I mean, I collect autographs, and I'm a very outgoing person where I talk to people all over the place, just like the Don Cherry outfit. I'm at the bar, I talk to people, and then COVID hits. And I'm like, what do I do with my spare time? And I started doing this with my buddy, and started just one name after another, and then it trickle down effect. And I've slowly collected a lot of big name, which I consider you a big name. This is called I Only Touch Greatness for a reason. Well,
big name because it's 9 letters to spell Solkowski. That's about the only thing I'd give you. But good on you, because you know what, Ryan? This medium has changed so much, right? And it's just, it's a work ethic, and it's emails and following up with people. And I don't think, and I hope you found that you're not getting too many people that, are blowing you off to go, hey, yeah, if you want to talk for a little bit, why not? Because I think we've learned something from COVID, and we've learned something from a professional level in doing our morning show on Sports at 650. People have become more accessible. And I think, and I remember saying, we had a meeting, you always say, good morning, how are you, to a guest, but I think it means a lot more right now, because these are some tough times for some people. And I think communicating is good, and it's important. but your YouTube channel, the podcasts and all that, it's amazing how many people are out there. Like, I don't know what I would be doing if I was 18 and 19 and I had this passion for sports, if I'd still try this, because so many people like yourself you're successful and going, this is cool for us to sit and talk and me find out about you, vice versa. And I've seen the people you've had on this show. I mean, that's a testament to you being kind, being people having a conversation and willing to do it. And I think there's always place for more conversation.
I used to run a record label, so I used to be really good in the studio making videos and stuff, and then also in the recording studio as well. So.
Oh, good for you. You're technically savvy. Yeah, sorry, we just got a lot of stuff going on in the house, so I tried to come in here, but no, I just grabbed an Ethernet cable, so you should be okay. You tell me what you heard and what you did, and I'll go back and.
Yeah, we were talking. I said I don't know if you heard me say about Kelly Rudy, how Kelly Rudy said that during this COVID thing, it gave us a chance to find other ways to communicate, like you were saying, and whatever you were saying right around there, I missed most of that.
Okay, well, I'll pick it up after your Kelly Rudy question then.
Okay, sure.
Okay, yeah, I think we've learned. I mean, you're mentioning I was not a Zoom guy. I'm not Mr. Technical guy. And you just go, all of a sudden, how much can you do? We've been able with our morning show, and trust me, when you're phoning people and you're asking for an interview and they go, what time? And you go, well, 6:30, 7, 8. I mean, that's not exactly met with, hey, perfect. Yeah, I'm always up that early. But what this allows us to do now is the way you can record things and everybody's still working from home. It's, hey, you know what about 3:30? Well, actually, yeah, we can pre-record it. We could do it by Zoom. The quality is so good. You end up doing it. So, we're doing our stuff from home. James Solkowski, who I do the shows with, we alternate daily doing sportscast for City Television, the breakfast television show.
Yep.
So it is. If Kelly's right, I mean, how much of the playoffs? He's always spending essentially 2 months in Toronto in a hotel room, and he's been able to do pretty much all of it from home, I think, moving in on the final. So, yeah, everyone's accessible. I'm doing a gala in 2 weeks' time for Uganda. All over the world, people are part of this, and it's for Africa, it's for Uganda, and raising money. And it took me a while to kind of wrap my head around that. And I think there's a lot of really bright people, much smarter than me, going, okay, we've just made the world a lot smaller. So at least we try and find something positive over what we dealt with so far since COVID's hit.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going on, and I really like that. It makes everybody accessible. Fuck, I got next week. I'm interviewing Tito Ortiz.
Are you really?
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like, I'm the guy who always asks questions. You just go through PR people to get guys like that? You've had some really good guests on the show.
Just ask. You throw shit at a wall and hope somebody says yes.
And that's it, right?
You can't. No, you can only go if you. I'm not gonna let somebody say no until they actually tell me no. So I'll keep trying until somebody says no. Hey,
that's the perfect attitude. After a while, you might just realize you can't. And I'm not going to give a list of names, but I could give you an awful lot of names that we try to get on our show. And sometimes, if you get to the person, it's easy. But when you got to go through a whole bunch of agents and whatnot, you just go, man, that's a mess. And so that's the one thing, right? If you know the person, if you can get to them, things are made so much simpler sometimes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I kind of hate when they do the agents too. You always got to talk. But I mean, the other radio station and channel had. I've been doing those guys as well over there, and yeah, I've had to go through their PR, but it's all worked out, and it's sometimes it's really hard, but I'd rather most people just say straight up no if they can't do it, or their manager says no, they can't do it. But
yeah, it happens, and if they're doing a whole bunch, sometimes it's just bad timing in your part. Going, man, I just don't want to pull it off. But I think it doesn't hurt to ask a couple times. It's like anything else. If you're looking after a job, you ask a few times, doesn't work out, you move on. There's a lot of people who are interesting, and the thing is, Ryan, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story, and not necessarily the sports people. I'm talking to anybody. Your next door neighbor, your entire family, my neighbor. Everybody has a story. That's what I love, is to ask those questions and find out what those cool stories are.
Yeah, that's for sure. 2008, you won an award for the best story called Baseball Signals.
Yeah, I guess so. Did I? Yeah, you know what? That was, I am not an awards guy. Some people, and not necessarily in sports, but others are. There's a lot of news people. There's some of these awards, you have to be in it. And honestly, for a buddy of mine who I produced a lot of stuff with, I said, we should start submitting our stuff. You know, the one thing that I will look back on when I'm all done and be proud of is the segment I created called Perry's Prospects. And that was simply based on the fact when my daughter started playing sports. And I thought it was funny being on the sidelines, watching how these kids played, not really caring, how parents were on the sidelines, really caring and cheering. And I remember going back to my boss and said, you know, I think this is pretty cool. I'm wondering if we could do this weekly. And he goes, well, Perry, it's not really a story, right? It's more of an essay. And I thought, well, but if you find it, if it's funny and people enjoy it, it'll be great. So we ran that for 14 years and culminated with a couple of events where we had underprivileged kids to BC Place. And through help of my connections, we spent a day where they practiced and they tried every sport imaginable. Before the Olympics, the following year, we took over the Richmond Oval, and we used all the courts in the middle, and then the families came for a skate around the Oval. I don't know if I really should have had my name attached to it, but I was thrilled to call it Perry's Prospects Super Camp, and you know, the company was great about it. But we did a lot of stories like that. So in 2008, one of them was, you know, the deaf baseball player we had, and it was a kid playing Little League, the first in BC, who couldn't communicate with his teammates other than kind of signing. And so the kids learned to sign and he learned to play. And it's funny because through the years, I've met a lot of people who have, we've done stories on, and someone will say, oh, by the way, do you remember this about my son or my daughter? And it's funny when you sit and you watch an interview and you write a story about someone, how that kind of sticks with you. And that's been a great part. And, you know, you go back years ago, I was at a friend's for Christmas, right? Just friends and family there. And one of the young men there had his girlfriend there. And it was probably an hour and a half through the dinner. And she goes, you know, Perry, I go, what? She goes, I was at one of the super camps. I go, really? Like, it's spread out that much. So it was a great thing to do. We've had conversations to doing it again, but it was nice to be honored, lucky to do stories like that. I think we had another one that picked up an award, and it was about a refugee soccer team. Yep. And it was a bunch of refugees who were coached by an old Scottish man. You couldn't understand the accent, but he put those guys on a bus every Saturday morning because their parents didn't drive. They were immigrants, and he just did it for the love of sports. And to me, when I say there are stories to be told, that's it. Any playground, any event. And it's not, I always shined away from, we would get emails of people suggesting, and it was, you know, Johnny had 6 goals last week. He's a heck of a player. It's like, good for Johnny then. He gets told he's a heck of a player every weekend. How about the kid that gets a couple of shifts and still tries his best? To me, that's where I've always had a soft spot for.
Yeah, that was one of my questions I had coming up about the Afghan refugee soccer team. That was 2009. You won back-to-back years for that. What is kid sport? And I see that come up in all the profiles. I was trying to dig on you today, and I couldn't find much.
Well, there's a problem. We should make sure we know what it is. Kid sport. It was a gentleman who introduced himself to me when I first moved here in '97. When I was in Edmonton, you know your Canucks history. Randy Gregg, Dr. Randy Gregg played for the Canucks, but won some Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers. I got to know Randy well, and he had started something called Fun Team Alberta. And what it was just for kids to play. And in fact, they would play hockey or soccer, and their parents would be on the field. It's like, okay, don't be intimidated. Let's just go kick it around and run around. And it was great. And Randy was nice enough to have me on the board of directors, did some golf tournaments. We went up north, 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and did a golf tournament there, which I emceed. So it was great. So at an early age, I thought, okay, this is cool. This is what I like. So when I moved to BC, a gentleman by the name of Pete Quevlin reached out and said, hey, this is kid sport. And I said, well, what is kid sport? And he goes, well, Perry, there's a lot of kids who just can't afford to play. It's an expensive city. And so what we do is they apply for a grant from us, and we help to pay upwards of $400 for their registration. Because we just want kids to be able to play. And I said, man, I am all in. And I have been now for 22 years. I've been one of their ambassadors. When I did that Perry's Prospect, Kid Sport was a massive supporter. So anything we can do for Kid Sport, and I tell you, I've had some conversations with their leaders in the last month. COVID-19 has been so hard on the kids, not being able to get out. And now, although restricted, they're able to get back on the ice, they're able to get back on the fields. But so many people have lost their jobs. So they know there's a big push coming. They gave over $2.1 million worth of grants last year. And they think that's going to grow. And they're worried we didn't have our golf tournament this year. Ritchie Brothers is a massive supporter. We do a challenge that'll make a couple $100,000 a year. That was gone. So there's a serious need for it. There's so many wonderful charities. But kids sport, to me, the fundamentals of just help these kids so they can play is always something that stuck with me. So that's why I've been a big supporter of theirs.
So I also seen online that you're an actor. You were in Romeo Must Die.
Solkowski laughs at that one. Yeah. That was yeah, I know that's funny. You go online. I think you actually find that actor page that you can have.
Yeah, that's where I found it. And I mean, Romeo Must Die, I know it was filmed here because we had Lance Gibson on who was in it as well. He's a UFC guy from Port.
He's a kickback. He lives up here.
Yeah, he's from Port Moody.
Yeah, he lives in this here. He was in that, hey?
Yeah.
I work, man, there's been a lot of people that probably would never think. If I was working in Edmonton and had a phone call to come here to Vancouver. And back then, you're trying to get a lay of the land. Okay, what would it be like? So this call would have been probably in May or June, and you heard there was going to be a new TV station coming to Vancouver. No one really knew a lot about it, but CTV was part of it. So I made some phone calls. I actually ended up talking to Dave Randorf because he was still here doing Sports Page. And I had met Dave a little bit. And I said, hey, what would you do? What do you know about this in Vancouver? They've reached out. I'm ready for a change. Would you come? And he said no. He said, I wouldn't. I haven't heard much good about it, but I wouldn't do it. And, I respected his opinion. And from what I would found, I got, okay, these guys are just going to be really much music type television. Maybe it's not the right thing to do. And then our daughter was born, and I took a couple of weeks off. And no word of a lie, the first phone call back when I came back that afternoon, I did the 6 o'clock sports and the 11 o'clock show. So you'd come back at like 2:30, your day would start. The first phone call was Vancouver again. Now this was 3 months later. They had already launched, and they said, we've got to change some things up. We've been told we have to have sports because it wasn't really a priority. And so I went back. I remember telling my wife, I go, you know what? Our world just changed. Both of us want an adventure. Let's go to Vancouver. So I did, but I was the only guy. You think people would never know. I said it must have been sports history. I was the only guy in the sports department, and they got the rights for the Vancouver Canucks and the Vancouver Grizzlies. So could you imagine those two properties? And you go, who's in sports? I go, yeah, just Perry. So obviously we needed some help. Jody Vance was working in promotions at that point, and she was a sports fan. So she ended up coming. But if you look at the people that walked in that building, my current boss, Craig McEwen, Dan Murphy did stuff for us. Brad Fay came over from Global to work for us. Who else was there? We had a lot of people that came through. James Duthie was the news reporter. So when I couldn't do sports, Duthie did sports. And I always remember he came to me and he goes, hey, I'm leaving. I go, where are you going? CNN? Like, you're incredible. He said, no, I'm going to TSN. I go, what? Jeez, like, I thought you left sports. You didn't want to do it anymore. So we had an array of talent. But because of Jody Vance is so well connected in the city, there was a phone call, and quite certain it came through her. And she said, Perry, these people want to do a movie, and they need a news anchor and a sports anchor. They're just going to come into the studio one morning and shoot it. And I said, I don't know. I'm new to Vancouver. It's okay. Sure. I guess I'll do a movie. And it was like full on. You come to the station, the big car's there to take you off site to get your makeup done, and all these hair people. And I came back, and they put this stuff on prompter. They said, okay, you'll be the news guy. So I read it. It took me 20 seconds. And they said, hey, that was really good. I go, okay, thanks. You want to do it again? I go, I don't know. Like, I just, you guys are in control. They could do it one more time. So I did it again. Honestly, Ryan, I don't think it took me more than 90 seconds. And they said, that's awesome. I go, okay, now what? They go, well, sign this paper. I still get checks to this day. And I always laugh because they're about $16, sometimes $12. And I look at it, it's US funds. But that was it. I was kind of such a blur. And that movie's become a little bit of a cult movie too. Romeo Must Die. A lot of people know of it. Jet Li, one of his first big movies, right? So
yeah, and Aaliyah died. So
exactly, right. So unfortunate what happened with her, but yeah, that was it. My one and only. I've never looked for anything else. Always wondered. Sometimes I should. There's so many people in this business that do that stuff, but that's my one moment. So I always laugh if I happen to be turning the channels and I see that's on, just to see if I can see my 10 seconds of acting, which was reading a teleprompter.
Yeah, the couple names you brought up there are people I have coming up too, like James Duffy. I trying to work on a day with him coming up, and I got Rintoul coming on right after you. So
Oh, awesome! You've got two great guys, right? It's a really small industry, and Duff's a great guy, a talented guy. Probably the best storyteller I've ever seen. He's got such a great sense of humor. He could take some stuff and just turn it in and just understand how to play it. We've seen it. He's done that stuff with Luongo and just multi-talented, and it was fun to be around. I think you find in this industry, and it is changing, but we have a lot of it with our young crew at Sportsnet 650, right? If you get into it, you look around, there's no mountain of money for you when you start. You just got a lot of people who are like-minded. Man, they're sports fans, and they'll work all around the clock to get better at it. And if you're fortunate, you stay in it for a while. But boy, my greatest friends are guys that I kind of started with back when we were 22 years old. Going, this is really cool. Okay, we get to go to the games. This is neat. And it's funny, you go through stages because you start in this and you're the same age as the player. And you go to the bar and maybe you see the players. And, that was my case because my best buddy's mom was Gretzky's maid. So we had it made. We had it made in Edmonton. We go to the bar and you go, oh, there's Gretz and Mess. And, and then you're the same age as the players. And then the next thing you know, you're the same age as the coach. And then the next thing you know, you're the same age as the GM in some cases. And then you're hanging out with the owners. You kind of go through stages, right? But you're a part of it, and you get to know it that much better because a lot of it doesn't change, but it's those relationships and the understanding of it all that hopefully gives you an advantage. And
you did the 2010 Olympics as well, right?
Yeah, that was the first Olympics, and that was great. And I think you do it by default, I guess, right? And when I was telling you how I decided to make the move here, I guess the one thing I left out is I had moved probably a month after when that second phone call said, you want to come to Vancouver. In between that first no to the yes, Sportsnet had been announced that CTV was starting a sports channel. So I knew I was coming to Vancouver, and if this local station didn't work out, well, the company that I was working for had themselves a sports channel. So I was in a really good position and had an opportunity to go to Toronto or stay here. So that was the safety net. So you kind of look at it like this. When they announced in 2003 that Vancouver's getting the Olympics, you kind of go, well, probably even if I'm terrible at my job, I finally get to work the Olympics. And I think for most, that just becomes the dream. And, I had mentioned earlier that I went to school with Gene Principe. Gene and I always stayed in touch. He moved to Edmonton just when I was leaving to come to Vancouver. But I knew what he was doing. But it was funny because I worked the Olympics and my whole thing was alpine skiing. So I was up at Whistler for 3 weeks and really spent the 2 years getting to know all our skiers. And we had a good national ski team back then, and it didn't work out for them on those specific days. But I got a phone call probably the day before the games, and it was Gene. And he goes, hey, this worked out. And I go, you know what, I was thinking of you. Because you get to one of those moments going, okay, you're 18 and you're hoping to make a career, and now we're about to do the Olympics. So I got the 2010 Olympics. I did the 2012 Olympics in London, which was great in the sense that, as someone told me after I did it, you go, you'll never do a bigger interview in your life. But my assignment for 2012 was the aquatics. And we had some moments, but the biggest moment was obviously when Michael Phelps wins his 21st gold medal and becomes it was a silver medal, in fact, in that race, but becomes the most prestigious and more Olympic medals than everybody. And, Phelps would always jog by and only do interviews with the Americans, right, NBC, and we always just laugh. He would just shake you right off. But, when he set that medal record, he knew he had to talk to everybody. And I did that interview with him. And at the Olympics, there's someone in the background counting you down, like you got a minute and a half, and that's it. And you got to finish up because he's got to go through every country. Everyone wants to talk to him. But his mom and his family was above me where we were positioned for CTV. And so they were yelling at him. He could hear him, and they're cheering 4 more years. Man, I am one, Ryan, to say, hey, listen to the rules. Don't bend them that much. But there are times when you bend the rules, and I was not stopping talking to Michael Phelps. I think we had something like 8 or 9 million people watching that night when we went back to look at it. I probably went 2.5, 3 minutes with him, and they gave me a really dirty lick when I was done. He was having fun. He was on top of the world. I was enjoying the moment. So I was lucky to do that in London, and then I went back and worked in a kind of a behind the scenes in Pyeongchang, which was really unique with a lot of the people that I've known for a long time from a technical standpoint, and worked on some of the the graphics and stuff that you saw in hockey and saw every hockey game there was in the men's hockey, which was awesome. So really lucky to do 3, and lucky enough to even run the torch for 2010. So that's a big moment for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask what your favorite interview was or story you've ever covered. And
Well, yeah, the Phelps one is good. I think the one that I probably, I don't know if I was the most nervous about, but you know how you've got such a great array of guests on that you're thrilled that you can talk to some people, not me, but real people. But I grew up a really big boxing fan, and I loved Sugar Ray Leonard. And Sugar Ray Leonard came to the River Rock Casino within the last 10 years, right? And it was, they have those fights there, and it's attended by the fight crowd, but there's not too many media that go to it. And so there was an availability for Sugar Ray Leonard, and it was like from 5:30 to 6:30, and it was on a Friday. So I think there's a lot of people that maybe don't go, yeah, great, and what's he going to say? But, we've got live trucks, and I said, do we have a live truck around? And it was almost more for me because, when you did CTV Sports, you had about 5 minutes for sports. But I said, I'd like to do my sports live there so I could go meet Sugar Ray Leonard. So, it's when you get to meet your hero, and sometimes you wonder, you got the Pedersen and the Boeser. I'm sure you've run into those guys. Yeah. I don't know if, they should be your equals. They're not older than you. But I was the kid, and Sugar Ray was my hero. Loved him, loved how he fought. So I'm walking in thinking, man, I hope this guy's not just, blah, and just, hey, you're the millionth guy that has talked to me, and that's all there's to it. But no one else was there. And he was unbelievable. And we were laughing, and he just had a laugh. Like, it was, okay, we got to wait. And, I said, you probably want your picture taken with me? And he goes, I'd love it, right? You just played it around. Not like I need a picture with you. I go, Ray, you want a picture with me? I'm a big deal here. And he just loved the attitude that I brought that day. And that was a half hour. We probably talked for 2.5 minutes for television. But that was a half hour where I go, okay, that was probably as much fun as I've ever had. Getting a chance to meet a guy that I idolized, and he was everything I wanted. Hey, we've got 3 dogs in our place. What kind of dog is that?
French Bulldog. Someone's at my door. Can you give me 1 second?
Okay.
Strata shit.
What's the name of the dog?
Tupac.
Really?
Yeah. Come here. Oh, you might not let me pick him up, but come here. Come here.
Hi, Tupac. Hey.
Yeah, he normally has a big gold chain on, but not right now.
Oh, that's funny. Cute. How old is he?
3.5.
Nice. So still got a lot of spunk to him.
Oh yeah, he's wild. He's nuts. I think they all are.
Yeah.
Okay, so now a little bit about the Canucks right now. What do you think we're doing with Markstrom?
It's kind of funny how the last month changed things, right? So many going, you can't afford to lose him. And I don't think they can, but they can't afford to overpay him. And I've kind of been leaning on the side that, Jacob Markstrom deserves to get as much money as he wants and is afforded to him by other teams. And I think he'll get that. And I think the Canucks have a number that they'll walk away from there. I don't think there's any way that he's getting paid $6 million. And I question whether they go deep 5 for him. I just, if Calgary is willing to jump in, and if term is 5 or 6 years, I don't think it happens. I think the only way it happens is if Jacob Markstrom is willing to say, hey, let's get something really short here, and we'll deal with it. But if I'm a player, why would I take that risk? We have these conversations with Pertuvi and Jovanovski and Bieksa, and it's just, you understand these guys, this is their living. It's going to end at some point. So I think as fans, you're passionate and go, please stay. But I think the business side of the player goes, man, get what you can, and it's too bad it won't happen here. I don't think he's going to be back. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah, that's like this. You want to get the guaranteed money, so. Yeah,
and you can't guarantee, and unfortunately, Vancouver can't guarantee it.
Yeah, that's one thing. Then my next thing was Demko. With Markstrom goes, I think Demko can handle the thing. We just need to. What about, I heard Marc-Andre Fleury's name coming up today.
Well, you know what? We've talked Marc-Andre Fleury on the show. We've talked Jimmy Howard on the show. We've mentioned Matt Murray on the show. I think the thing with that, Ryan, is there's a lot of people who you don't have to invest loads of money in. Marc-Andre Fleury's only got 2 years left at $7 million. Now, that's a lot, but you know you're not paying Demko much money for a bit, and maybe that works. So I do think, although everybody wants Jacob Markstrom, when the Canucks go, okay, so what if we lose him? I do think they have a lot of people who, with Thatcher Demko, if he continues to do what he has, they go, we'll be okay here. Like, there's not a panic mode. I was one of the guys back in 2011, 2012 when it finally became, hey, they've got two goalies, Schneider and Luongo. What do you do? I'd move Luongo. Go with the kid. You free yourself up. They ended up getting Bo Horvat for Corey, but whether that was a move, that's a move that still haunts him now, right? Because of Roberto's contract. So I do think for Jim Benning, the decision he makes now in goal is something that's going to lay the foundation or hurt the foundation for years to come with this team.
Yeah, if Demko does end up sticking around, or Markstrom sticks around, that we have to keep Demko. What do you think about Demko and Virtanen for Bowen Byram?
Well, I threw that out there. I threw that out there back when the playoffs were going on. I had texted someone in the league and said, do you think this is crazy? Do you think a Demko for Bowen Byram is crazy? Knowing that they need a goalie in Colorado, knowing that they're flush with young blue liners in Colorado. And the person said, yeah, crazy if you're Colorado. But I'm not so sure. I mean, it's a great fit. And it's funny, our text line, everyone has every scenario, and I laugh at the passionate Canuck fans because, the number of trades Louis Eriksson has and how Canuck fans look at the contracts that are bad, but think other people don't know they're bad. So we can just move this and that. I think Jake's a very interesting proposition. I thought someone might actually offer sheet Jake Virtanen because I think if you offered him something, you don't lose a lot. You'd have to give up a second-round pick, and I don't think the Canucks go very high with a salary for him, right? It's just the fact that Jake is Jake, and at some point you're going to have to cut bait. I think they're willing to probably do that now. They'd keep him if the salary doesn't go up that much, but Jake has some numbers that an arbitrator would go, those are pretty good, actually. He deserves a raise. He deserves to make $3 million. I don't think the Canucks plan on paying Jake Virtanen $3 million.
Yeah, he had 18 goals this year, so if it goes to arbitration, that's almost 20. He probably would have finished with 20 if you gave him the rest of the season.
That's exactly it, right? It takes him that long to get going, and then the fear factor was what's he going to do himself for 3 months, and unfortunately we saw that the discipline and that drive individually by himself isn't necessarily there, and that's the biggest issue that the team has is, that desire to be better every day, train hard every day, and I think, everyone would expect when these guys get back together in December or January, if Jake's with them, they'd probably go, boy, I bet you Jake's got to, whip himself into shape. At some point he'll mature. Some player once told me, he goes, you don't know how good it is until you get traded. And you go, okay, I got to work a little bit harder here. This is a business now. So we'll see if that happens.
And, of course, all the Dumba for Boeser ones. I don't know. I've kind of brushed that away this week. Last week I thought it was going to happen. And then, obviously, this week it's not in the news as much.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not convinced Brock Boeser is here in 3 or 4 years simply because his contract is good. But I also don't think the Canucks are looking to push him out the door. Yeah. I think Brock, and we battle this every morning because Zabalski's kind of anti-Brock. I think Brock's become a better hockey player. He needed to be a superstar when he came here as a rookie. There wasn't a whole lot there. And he was that superstar and probably played above his head. Everything he shot went in. Goes to the All-Star game, you're the MVP, go, okay, my goodness, am I really that good? But he doesn't need to be that incredible superstar right now because of the help he has around him. This team is Pettersson, this team is Hughes. And then you need to throw in Bo, and then you need to throw in Brock, and then you got to find some other guys to do their bit. But you also have to make significant changes at some point to get closer to where you want to go. I think the Canucks are a better hockey team than we anticipated. I think we're fooling ourselves if we think they're knocking on the door for a Stanley Cup. But I think we also should believe this is now a playoff team and will be for a long time if the right moves are made. So that's why this offseason is so important.
Yeah, everyone's talking how Boeser he doesn't shoot the puck anymore. But now you have way more people to pass the puck to. You got Pettersson, you got Quinn.
Exactly.
And Bo can score. So when he first got here, had that one-timer off the top of the circle. And, he doesn't even need to do that anymore because he's got other people to shoot the puck.
No, I think he tried to be a better. Remember that game, and I can't remember who it was, but it was so on Brock. He was in the offensive zone, and he left his man, and his man took off and scored an important goal, and Brock just didn't chase him down. And it was brought to light because it was so obvious. And ever since that moment, I think he realized, you know what, there's a couple different ends of the ice here, and I've only worked on one, and that's all they asked him to. I think he's made himself that much better. So you throw some injuries, you saw what he's had to deal with off the ice. He's a character guy that I think is so important to this team. He could be like a Joe Pavelski for a long time.
Yeah.
And you need those types of guys, right?
I feel like him and Pedersen are best friends too. So
Oh, they are. And they guaranteed they are. And that doesn't necessarily mean you get to stay. But it doesn't hurt when you're a young growing group. And I think that's why they were so good in the bubble. They didn't have a big issue being in the bubble, right? They all hung out together. They all enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, that's true. Jet Wu, does he ever make the team? Or
Yeah, you know what? First rounders, second rounders, we get so excited. We talk about them to death. And then you realize just because you're drafted, there's still a long road to get to. I mean, we've watched it with Romeo Must Die, who may now finally get here, right? So, Jet Wu, when he's considered one of the better young defensemen in Canada, and you get invited to the camps that he has, that's promising. But promising is one thing, and being an NHL player is another. So we'll see. I mean, if you look at it, when you'd rather be a young guy on a hockey team that has struggled than a young guy trying to bust into the Washington Capitals. It takes a long time to get in there, and we'll see. A lot of people look at Olio Levy. Lucas Johansson is a player from the Port Moody area, drafted in the first round, last defenseman to go in that same draft. Levy is. Well, we haven't seen him in Washington because that's a good hockey team. He's been hurt. Doesn't mean he's a bad hockey player. It just means the first 3 years of his career are not scripted as, hey, first rounder and automatically you play. It's first rounder and then you work and try and getting better, and maybe you get a break sometimes and eventually you're in the NHL. I think we have, Ryan, been spoiled to see Brock Boeser turn into a pro like he has, to Pete Pedersen and see Hughes. That is not normal. Hasn't happened since the 60s with the Rangers to have rookies like that make that much of an impact in the NHL. We've been spoiled.
Was that Ryan Johansson's brother, right?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it's his brother.
That's what I thought. Okay, and the three, I only got a couple more.
Okay.
Who gets bought out this year? Because, Eriksson, I still don't see them buying him out because it's ends up with $333,000 a year. He's really only saving by buying him out.
No, I think your best hope for Eriksson is somehow he decides that he doesn't want to come here, because I'm not convinced when the league comes back that there's an American Hockey League. I think they'll have taxi squads here. I just don't think you're going to play hockey in the AHL. And is Eriksson going to come here and collect that paycheck? Does he have an interest to go to Sweden? I think the player we may see bought out will be Sven Baertschi, because I think obviously when he didn't make the team last year, he was disappointed, went back and was a true pro and did everything they asked of him in Utica. But then, doesn't want to come to be part of this squad, to go into the bubble. And as a young father, young child, COVID, I don't think anybody had an issue with that. But I do think that kind of showed that he's probably done with the organization and we'd be better off elsewhere. So you buy out that $3 million, save a little bit of cap money. But I think that might be the one name we see when buyouts are allowed, that Baertschi might be the one guy they buy the ticket from.
So do you have a personal highlight or a personal low light?
Well, this is the most recent highlight, so that's good.
Yeah.
Personal highlight. You know what? I would say, being part of the Olympics, but being, and not because, simply it was because who I work for, but this job allowing me to have that 45-second run with an Olympic flame. We went to Merritt. My wife and daughter came with me. We had been busy because we were following the flame. We worked about 45, 50 days straight when the Olympics were starting up. And honestly, and then it was a terrible attitude to go, geez, now we got to drive to Merritt for this. No one in that city was there. And then all of a sudden at night, when the torch run started, you get on a bus and everyone tells their story as to, why are they on this bus? And some of the stories were incredible. One of the teachers from the University of Calgary explained that, she said, I don't know if you guys know this name, but, he was a student of mine and I got a phone call and he said, hi, Mrs. Whomever, do you know who I am? And she goes, oh yeah, no, you were a student. He goes, do you know what I do now? She goes, of course I do. Well, she had taught a story about the Olympic flame and the history. And he was one of the students and he was in charge of the flame run. So he said, we can't have this plane go through the country and me being charged without you running with it. And I just go, boy, was that a great story. And then some other people, my story was just, hey, I'm just lucky that I'm doing part of the games. But when I got that flame in my hand, Ryan, I was just on a side street and there's people in the window. You know, I was lucky. Of course, we had our TV camera in front of me to show, hey, we'll run it on the news. But boy, it's amazing what can go through your head in 45 seconds when you're a kid and the Olympics are the biggest thing and you're sitting there carrying that flame. That forever will be a highlight, not so much of who I talked to or what I did or what event I was, that this job allowed me to be in that position. It was something that was really incredible for me. And as far as bad moments, hey, they happen. You make mistakes, you make hundreds of mistakes and you just roll with it. But, I think that's what you tell young kids. Hey, you're going to make mistakes. That's okay. No one looks, oh, look at that. There's a terrible mess up. It happens all the time, right? And you just roll with it and you get more confident and comfortable with it. So really lucky to have the run that I've had and hopefully it continues for a long time.
Yeah, you definitely try to learn from the mistakes too.
Yeah, well, for sure you do, right? You can't. My first job was great because it was in Yorkton. I did the 11 o'clock news, and it was what they call a stick back then. The same news would run on CBC at 11 o'clock, and then they would replay it at 11:30 on CTV. So I would finish the newscast, and then I'd have to do a bunch of stuff in the newsroom to clean up. But the show was on. So I was forced to watch myself and go, okay, that wasn't very good. And to this day, if I'm doing any kind of even a taped interview now, or if I'm doing anything on TV and it's part of a big production that we pre-tape and then they roll it, I'll take my earphones off because I don't want to hear me. Like I'll know if that was good or it was bad, and I can't change it if it wasn't great. And I'm not going to go, oh, that was really good. So I think when you learn to watch yourself, even you watching this back, that's the biggest test to see, okay, were you comfortable with it? Don't think you were good. Don't think you were terrible, but watch it and be honest with yourself. And to have that at my very first job, that was an invaluable tool for me to kind of force myself to have to watch this every day to see if I'm okay, if I would turn me off.
Yeah, that's definitely, I always sit there and watch back on all the old episodes that we've done too.
Yeah, good for you.
I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time. We had an hour already, so that's great. We got a 2-1 hockey game over your shoulder.
Yeah, back to the beauty of PVR, man. They didn't have that when I started. It was old school VHS, so I'll get it from the beginning and watch it. But thank you, man, and congratulations. Good on you to have the guests that you have and to work hard at. You do a nice job.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right,
and
buddy,
I'll send you the link as soon as it's done.
please do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.